Marines are up in L.A. and are set to take over protection of the Wilshire Federal Building.
Those Marines, along with thousands of National Guard members, can remain in Los Angeles this weekend after an appeals court blocked a ruling that would have forced the Trump administration to give authority of the Guard troops back to Governor Gavin Newsom.
This comes as protests are planned for tomorrow all across the country and right here in San Diego. CBS 8's Kelly Hessedal joins us live from downtown for a closer look at this legal battle. Kelly?
That's right, and the appeals court essentially said until we decide otherwise, the president can continue doing what he's been doing in federalizing the National Guard and bringing in troops, or bringing in Marines, that is, to address these protests. Another legal showdown is scheduled for Tuesday.
He is not a monarch. He is not a king.
Yesterday, U.S. District Judge Charles Breyer ruled President Trump exceeded his authority in sending troops to L.A. In his 36-page ruling, he wrote, quote, his actions were illegal, both exceeding the scope of his statutory authority and violating the 10th Amendment to the United States Constitution. But victory for Governor Newsom was short-lived. Legal analyst Dan Eaton.
Hours later, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals said, wait, we're going to put that particular order, which would have prohibited the president from federalizing the National Guard, on hold.
In a social media post, the president thanked the appeals court, writing, quote, if I didn't send the military into Los Angeles, that city would be burning to the ground right now. We saved L.A. 200 Marines just arrived in Los Angeles today. A panel of judges will now listen to arguments Tuesday at noon, 3 days after protests are expected to unfold in San Diego and across the country. Eaton says though the judges will focus on the evidence and argument before them, they still live among us and will be aware of the consequences of the ruling by what does or doesn't happen over the weekend. He says ultimately this issue could end up in the U.S. Supreme Court.
The court could very well say, look, the president can't do this without at least consulting with the governor of the state. Two, the court can say courts don't get to second guess the president, which would mean that the president could do this at his discretion when he finds that conditions suggest that federalization of the National Guard is warranted.
And the governor has made it clear, should the high courts, or should the courts at all, I should say, side with the president, that he's afraid the president will send in the military to help out during immigration raids across the country. Now, the high court session wraps up in July, so Eaton says if this case does end up there, we likely wouldn't get a decision until sometime later this year. Marcelo and Carlo?
Meantime, Kelly, that appeal is going to be paid attention to a lot of people. They will be watching closely. What do we know about that case?
Well, that hearing set for Tuesday. The Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals is up in San Francisco. There's going to be 3 judges on the panel. 2 of them were appointed by President Trump. 1 was appointed by former President Joe Biden, though Eaton says don't read anything into that. There have been rulings that have been made regardless of which president appointed them. The hearing is open to the public and you can watch it online. So we will have a link up on our website where you can watch it for yourself. Just go to CBS8.com.
All right, everyone watching what's happening real time and also in the courts where those legal battles sometimes can last days, weeks, even months. Thanks so much, Kelly.